The voice report says the apartment was quiet when they arrived. Too quiet. No screams, no resistance. Just a locked door in Sakai, Osaka, and a family that would never leave it alive. Inside, a 29-year-old woman lay motionless. Beside her, her child. By the time the truth surfaced, Japan would be forced to ask an uncomfortable question. How did a marriage that crossed borders end in blood? And how did the warning signs hide in plain sight? The story does not begin with sirens. It begins with a woman's name. Manami Aramaki. She was 29 years old. To the outside world, she was quiet, polite, the kind of woman who bowed slightly too deeply and apologized even when she had done nothing wrong. She lived in Sakai, in Osaka Prefecture, in a modest apartment that smelled faintly of laundry detergent and miso soup, a place where shoes were lined neatly by the door and a child's laughter once echoed down the hallway. She was a daughter, a wife, a mother. And before everything broke, she believed she was building a life that mattered. She had married Barbosa Anderson Robson, a Brazilian man who came into her life with stories of love across borders, of a future that felt larger than Japan's narrow streets. Friends remembered how hopeful she sounded back then, how she spoke about compromise, about patience, about holding a family together even when it was difficult. But difficulty has a way of disguising itself. Inside that apartment, the air was often heavy. Financial pressure, cultural misunderstandings, the quiet loneliness of a woman navigating marriage, motherhood, and responsibility largely on her own. Manami carried more than she admitted. She smiled through discomfort. She told herself that endurance was love. There were moments, small, fleeting, when doubt crept in. Late nights, tense silences, arguments that never truly resolved, only paused. But she pushed those thoughts away. For her child, for the idea of family, for the belief that things would eventually get better. No one saw the full weight she carried. And maybe that's why this story matters. Because stories like Manami's don't end in tragedy all at once. They fracture quietly, long before the final break. If stories like Manami's matter to you, if you believe voices should not disappear into silence, consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing. Not for clicks, but so lives like hers are remembered and truths like this are never buried. Because once the truth surfaces, it can never be undone. They met in a way that sounded almost romantic. Different languages, different cultures, different worlds colliding in a moment that felt destined. Robson was confident, charismatic. He spoke of dreams bigger than Japan's quiet expectations. Manami listened. She believed. Marriage followed. A child followed. Responsibility followed quickly after that. But love across borders is not just romance. It is paperwork, dependence, power dynamics no one talks about. Manami became the anchor, socially, culturally, legally. She handled daily life, childcare, stability. Robson, meanwhile, struggled to find his place. Tension settled into the marriage like dust. Neighbors later said they heard arguments, not constant, but sharp enough to remember. Friends noticed Manami growing quieter, less expressive. She stopped sharing details. When asked if she was okay, she smiled and said she was tired. In Japanese culture, endurance is often mistaken for strength, but endurance has limits. Inside the apartment, the walls listened to conversations that went nowhere, to promises repeated too many times, to resentment that hardened slowly like cement setting in silence. Robson felt trapped. Manami felt alone, and neither seemed able to step back before the damage became irreversible. Still, Manami held on. She believed love meant patience, that family meant sacrifice, that leaving was worse than staying, no matter how heavy staying felt. She did not know she was standing at the edge of irreversible. August in Osaka is thick with heat. The night it happened, the air felt heavier than usual. Inside the apartment, something finally snapped. Investigators would later piece together fragments, timelines, forensic details, unanswered questions. What remains certain is this: Manami and her young daughter never walked out of that home alive. When neighbors heard noise, it was already too late. Emergency responders arrived to a scene that defied comprehension. A family space transformed into a place of irreversible loss. The kind of loss that lingers long after the lights are turned off. Manami was 29. Her daughter was just beginning her life. News spread quickly. Japanese media reported a stabbing, a mother and child, a foreign husband at the center of the investigation. Shock rippled through the community. People asked the same questions over and over. How does something like this happen? What signs were missed? Who failed to intervene? The apartment fell silent, but the silence screamed. Justice moves slowly in Japan, methodically, quietly. Police began their investigation. Evidence was collected, statements taken. The story unfolded not in dramatic courtroom speeches, but in careful procedural steps. Barbosa Anderson Robson became the primary suspect. Years passed between the crime and formal charges, between shock and legal reckoning, between grief and the slow grind of accountability. For Manami's family, time did not heal. It stretched the pain. Every delay felt like another wound. For Robson, isolation deepened, a foreigner in a system known for its severity. His name now permanently tied to the worst night of his life and theirs. By 2025, charges were formalized. The truth was no longer avoidable. Tragedy does not end with the dead. Manami's family mourned in private, in ritual, in unanswered questions. There were no words for the double loss, daughter and grandchild, taken in a single night. Whispers followed them: pity, curiosity, unspoken judgment. Robson's family faced a different burden: the weight of association, the shame, the disbelief, love colliding with horror. Two families fractured, two bloodlines altered forever. No winners, only survivors. There comes a moment when denial collapses, when excuses lose their power, when love can no longer soften violence. This chapter is not about justification, it is about confrontation with reality, with responsibility, with irreversible consequence. The system moved forward, evidence spoke, silence ended. Truth does not comfort, but it clarifies. Manami Aramaki's life mattered. Her daughter's life mattered. They are remembered not only for how they died, but for how they lived, for their presence, for the love they gave, for the warning their story carries. Justice does not restore life, but it affirms truth. And in that truth, families find something fragile but real: closure. This story ends not in forgetting, but in remembering, and in the quiet determination that silence will never protect violence again.